Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the PB Political Podcast. I'm Eshan Pokhrel,
I'm Michael Bodeker.
and we are back covering historical elections. And I don't even know if this is historical because we're only 8 years removed from 2016, possibly the biggest upset in American history in electoral politics. I think there's, I don't think there's any question about it. At least at the federal level, I think this is absolutely the biggest upset. Obviously, President Donald Trump, or businessman Donald Trump, defeating former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton in 2016. An absolutely shocking election. This is really the first one. And we said that, we remember the Obama years, but for me, this is the first one where I was actively following the election itself, just like witnessing everything going on and reacting to it in real time. And I think this is just like going to be remembered as one of the turning points in American history, at least in modern American history. Bodeker, what do you initial thoughts? I guess.
Agreed. This is the first election that not that I remember. I remember vaguely 2008. I do remember vaguely 2008, 2012. I don't think really anybody remembers 2012, honestly. But 2016 was really like our coming of age, at least my coming of age election, and probably yours too. I think 2016 we will look back on. That will be the election of all the elections that we've covered lately. If we talk about 2020, I think 2020 might get history books just because of January 6th. I doubt that if January 6th had happened, 2020 would get a ton of coverage. 2024, I think if Harris wins, I think it'll get a lot of coverage because it'll be the first female president. But 2016, you will look in kind of our modern American world. There's the post-2016 world and the pre-2016 world in terms of at least American politics.
I think
it's such a massive schism, and we remember both.
I think, yeah, absolutely. I think this is. I mean, honestly, this is a shifter in world politics too. I think mainly because it's like, I think it was a populist swing that we hadn't seen, honestly, like September 11th onwards, but there's kind of a consensus, at least in the Western world, of like the type of government, like the type of interventionism, the type of like policy making, the way things have worked. Tea Party wave, 2010, sort of laid the ground for what could come, and then 2016 just absolutely blew the door open. And you can look around the world. I mean, like Viktor Orban kind of rose to prominence. I don't think he was prime minister before Trump was. I know Narendra Modi. He was prime minister in the past. He might have been before. I don't know, but he's become more of a popular figure worldwide. You have like Narendra Modi, who was elected in 2014. But really started getting notoriety worldwide when Trump started really like appearing with him and praising him. Then also like the elections, and it's been going on recently too, like France, the Netherlands, Spain, a lot of the Western world, Slovakia, another EU country that have turned a little bit more populist, and at times you could call it right wing. I don't know if populism is always right wing. I think there's definitely elements of both sides, and I think Trump perfectly encapsulated, at least in 2016. A true change candidate, and I think 2016 was the change election of our generation. Absolutely. Let's go ahead and let's run through the results first, and then let's talk about the race, because I think if we get the results out here, we're gonna have a lot to talk about in the race itself. So off the bat, just Trump. Not only did he win, he famously fifth president. I believe the fifth president to win the election, but lose the popular vote. He lost the popular vote, 46.1% for Trump, 48.2% for Clinton. I think Gary Johnson, the Libertarian candidate, former Republican governor of New Mexico, got 3%, maybe 3.2%. So he wasn't at the 5% threshold. It's the closest the Libertarians gotten since in a long time, maybe ever, to getting the 5% public fund matching and third party, like official party status. But yeah, 3 million more votes for Clinton. Electorally, though, Trump won 30 states and Maine's 2nd district. Hillary Clinton won 20 states and the District of Columbia. Total electoral vote, 304 to 227. And we can mention the running mates. Mike Pence, governor of Indiana, former governor of Indiana, and then I always remember, like, I just always remember Tim Kaine, a current senator from Virginia, who is maybe the most forgetful vice president, like presidential candidate in history. So that's where we were on the results, and take it away, I guess.
Yeah, these results were crazy. You were right. Gary Johnson got 3.28% of the vote. Extremely, extremely divisive election. In terms of the results, I mean, the thing we talk about a lot is it's those 80,000 votes. You know, that's basically what we talk about. You know, a lot of the time, are those 80,000 to 150,000 swing voters across Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, North Carolina. Really, there's about 250,000 people there that can kind of decide an election depending on how they're feeling. If you look at the results here, Trump won North Carolina by about 3.5%. He won Florida by a little over 1%. He won Pennsylvania by 54,000 votes. He won Arizona by a little less than 100,000 votes. He won Michigan by 11,000 votes. He won Wisconsin by 23,000 votes. I mean, he lost New Hampshire by 3,000 votes.
I was going to mention New Hampshire.
Yeah, and that's when we thought New Hampshire was swinging right. And as we've seen more recently, New Hampshire is still probably a D+8, D+9 state in a normal environment.
I think Trump's been the closest to breaking the northeastern lock. I mean, he won Maine's 2nd district, which isn't like a guaranteed thing for any Republican. I mean, I think Romney lost it. I don't think McCain won it. Trump's the only person to win it in recent, at least in the 2000s.
Yeah, and this was really, really close. I mean, this really was, a Pennsylvania and a Michigan away, and even Wisconsin. I mean, that's 100,000 people changing their vote away from a Hillary Clinton presidency, and who knows where we would be now, because those candidates could not have been further apart. And we'll talk a little bit more about the actual election itself, but the results, crazy. I think it was kind of a crazy race. I mean, Hillary Clinton, if you look at the polling, she ended 2016 being up 2.1% in the RCP average. She led 9 of the last 10 polls before the election, at least on the RCP, pretty significantly. Now, I will say, though, is we thought people had their minds made up on Trump in 2016. If you look at some of these polls on the RCP average in 2016, 44-39 for Clinton, 47-43 Clinton, 48-43, 50-44, 48-44. Now, transition that to our 2024 polling of Trump and Harris. It's 49-47, 49-48, 50-50, 47-48, 47-49, 50-47, 47-43, 52-48. We thought people had their minds made up on Trump then. After 8 years of Trump, this was still beginning era Trump. I mean, he still had, I think, a lot of ground to improve, and it seemed like he was winning over white, suburban, rural. It was a fascinating coalition. It really was a realignment of American politics. It was, the loss of Iowa and Ohio for Democrats, other than Sherrod Brown, who is probably going to retain his seat this year because of Trump, I think.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
Irony, yeah.
But this election marked the loss of a lot of the Rust Belt to Trump. Pennsylvania obviously voted for Biden in 2020. However, that being said, Trump does better than any Republican to turn out rural voters, rural and suburban voters.
Yeah.
He's incredible at that. He runs up margins unlike any Republican ever has in rural Michigan, rural Wisconsin, and the crazy thing is he still has room to grow.
Even in the Deep South, which has been consistently Republican, Trump's running the best numbers they've ever seen in Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia. Well, not Georgia, Florida. He's just been running away with the map in rural areas since he came.
And he still has room to grow. He really couldn't grow, even now. But this was because of Trump's image and stuff. I mean, you'll remember the results. The image of the lady crying in the street. No, God, why? That was the big meme. Because this was a meme culture election for sure.
I think looking back at it, there's definitely so Trump is obviously probably the most controversial figure definitely in politics right now, but also I think a lot of the controversy that Trump has, it's a symptom. I think it all came from the fact that we had really, no matter what party was in charge from 1990, maybe in 1990s, let's say 1990s to 2015, it was, you kind of had consensus, and the consensus came a lot in the foreign policy, where everyone was united in the same front, obviously, especially post 9/11. There was obviously some stragglers from that. I guess notably Bernie Sanders is one of the biggest ones, and what's her name? Is it the California representative that ran for Senate this year? She didn't win. I forgot her name. She was
Karen Bass.
No, not Karen Bass. Not her.
Barbara Lee.
Barbara Lee. She was the only other person to oppose that Iraq war, right? So outside of those two, who are really super progressive Democrats and independents in Bernie's case, there hasn't been a candidate that's really blown the doors open on the presidential level like Trump has. And I think that fact that he was what he was, in that I think Trump and Bernie, when Bernie was running, well, we can talk about Bernie a little bit more later on, but they tapped into the same same anger in voters, but in different ways. And I think so when Trump got the nomination, people were I think the media, especially the media, was just ready to destroy him. And I think a lot of the initial criticism, there was a lot of valid criticism of Trump in his rhetoric and stuff, but a lot of it was overblown. And I think it's actually kind of created a super toxic environment. I think that if Trump, if president, let's say I don't, there's no comparison. I can't make another scenario, but I think Trump initially, and I think historically, we're gonna look back and say that he was done wrong off the bat by media, and I think it really tarnished his image to a lot of people in this country, because there's a reason he was elected president. There's people really supported him and his message, and I think the vilification of him was just absolutely, I think it was wrong at the extent of that it happened, and I think it's really done irreparable harm to political rhetoric in the country. And I think that's not a good thing to. I think there has to be a reckoning with that in the future, because I think it's just been awful. But yeah, that's my little spiel on Trump's rise. I don't know if you have anything to add, and we can get into the primaries, because the primaries were fascinating in this election.
This is a perfect time to kind of pivot into. And this may be a longer episode, just because I feel like we're going to be able to just kind of yap about this so much because we lived through it. But kind of getting into Trump, the candidate, he comes down the escalator. Everybody's like, that's the magic moment. I kind of disagree. I think it was the moment that he completely destroyed Jeb Bush in the debate, the quiet. I think that, Trump is going into that. I think Trump, like you said, Trump was a symptom, not the cause of, I think, that a lot of the division that we have. Because I think there was a huge, after the Cold War was won, there was this big, kind of neoliberal, post-Cold War consensus.
Yeah.
The Bill Clinton administration, the Bush administration, the Obama administration. Now, the Clinton and Bush administrations were more similar than I think Bush and Obama were, just because I think Obama was a lot more socially liberal,
think so,
obviously being Democrat than Bush was. But in terms of the way that they ran the military, Obama and Bush were
the same,
fairly similar.
Pretty much the same.
Fairly similar.
Yeah.
It was mostly, some economic stuff after 2008. Obama kind of taking a more regulatory approach, which makes sense for being a Democrat. And then social policy, we saw Obergefell happen in the Obama administration.
Right,
and, Obama went from campaigning on traditional marriage to having Obergefell during his presidency. So that, I mean, it was a huge cultural shift during the Obama administration. And I think that, a lot of people didn't really recognize it was a lot of people being, the boomers are starting to get older. They're not, I don't know if they were quite retirement age yet, but they're hitting, middle to middle late age. You have your Gen Xers who are kind of hitting middle age, and they're growing a little bit discontented with the America that they grew up in. And seeing what's happened, especially since 9/11. And these are people that lived to see the end of the Cold War, and they're getting frustrated with the way things are going on. And I think Trump was the perfect answer to that, because he was, his whole pitch was, I'm not a DC person. I dislike them as much as you do. So elect me, and I'll tell them how we all really feel. And guess what? That resonated with a ton of people. Like you said, that there's a reason he won, as unpopular as he may be now. And obviously, the longer that he's in politics, the less he can use that excuse. And I think that actually that's kind of one of the reasons he hurts himself so much now, is because he kind of still runs on being an outsider, even though he's been in the political arena.
He's not an outsider anymore. It's just a fact.
Yeah,
right?
The better part of a decade. I mean, his people are everywhere in government now.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
He was the symptom, and he is going on just a spree against all of the Republicans in the debate, just destroying them. And like, you and I can both sit there and we can probably agree that if anyone but Trump runs against, like, I think Trump also benefited from the fact that Hillary Clinton was probably the least popular major party electoral candidate in at least our lifetime.
Until Joe Biden, clearly. I don't know. Until Joe Biden, I suppose. I guess, yeah. But absolutely, she was
political evil.
Super. And she didn't help herself either. Like, I see what you're trying to get at. Like, if any other Republican had won that primary, it's possible, it's likely Clinton would have won, because Obama was popular. Obama left office with a pretty high approval rating. People liked Obama. People just liked Obama as like a person. He has a vibe. He just like.
But he was very presidential.
He's very presidential. Absolutely. Yeah. People don't particularly like Hillary Clinton throughout the debates because she comes off as condescending a lot. Also very arrogant. And again,
a deplorable statement.
The deplorables, the basket of deplorables is what she called Trump supporters. And again, that's with her ignoring. Also, and we can talk about the primary fight. Maybe she meant to ignore. I don't know. The ignorance of the problems the real problems that a lot of middle America had. I think it's a master. Bernie Sanders, first thing at the minimum. Bernie Sanders probably should have been the Democratic nominee. The fact that I think Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump going head to head in an election would have been fascinating, because I think they would have been both of them had like the same, very different approaches to the same problems. And I think I have a lot of respect for Bernie Sanders for like his consistency over time. I'm not a fan of his political positions, but he's been able to create. He's the amount of influence he's had as a senator and as a presidential candidate for the progressive movement has been pretty amazing, I guess you can say. Like, it's very respectable to see a lot of his like positions become standard in the Democratic Party, and that's a lot of work that he put in. And Trump's the same way, but on a very expedited timeline. Like, if Bernie had won the nomination, then we would have had like a similar effect on the left, I think. But Trump just took the party over. And yeah, Trump's definitely the best debater we've seen and probably just like the way, because he doesn't come at it like a politician. He's just coming at it like a guy he's just coming in his own style, which is like really hard to quantify even. I mean, it's absolutely insane. And he just was able to shut down everybody in that debate. Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, Jeb Bush, among many others. Was a big primer. John Kasich, who actually had a big campaign. So yeah, I mean, it was absolutely insane. Let's get into the primaries. Let's get into, which one do we do, Democratic or Republican first?
Let's do the Democratic one first. So this one was, I think you're absolutely right, by the way, that Bernie kind of did get a little bit robbed. Which, by the way, Bernie versus Trump in general that has to be like an independent's worst nightmare. I mean, that's genuinely like
The Libertarians
sound
would
the
have
alarm
gotten.
bells if you're an independent. Like,
Gary
that's
Johnson would have
because
gotten a lot of love in that one.
I mean, imagine like voters like where we live in Alabama, like
Yeah.
Bernie, dude. If people thought Biden or Harris were scary, I think that Bernie, as genuinely a major party's nominee, would scare the daylights out of conservative leaning people across the country.
It would be fascinating though,
But
because his approval among rural voters was super high, and his grassroots. And obviously, I mean, Bernie's run the most successful primary campaign in like for grassroots campaign. So honestly, I don't know. It would be. I think on like a.
I think
Yes.
and I guess what I mean by that is he scares like the Bush Republicans.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
The intelligentsia Republicans, he terrifies. In terms of the grassroots support, him and Trump kind of draw on similar bases.
It's not. It's not hard.
Different styles, of course.
It's not like uncommon to like talk to a Trump supporter who was like, oh, yeah, I like Bernie Sanders. Like if I wasn't to vote for Trump, I'd vote for Bernie. It's like the same. Like you have like. Yeah, no, it's I've seen it before.
They're very changing.
Yeah, and they have like similar. They come from similar places, but vary differently on like policy. But the anger they're tapping.
Bernie's impact is something we will read about in history books, because I think even though the modern left didn't immediately go to straight Bernie style, I think Bernie being around and being such a competitive candidate for so long, I think the modern left is way closer to Bernie now than they were in 2016. And I think Bernie has had a lot to do with that because he's been so popular. And I think also because young people are growing more and more disaffected, that Bernie seems more and more kind of right, I guess, in a lot of young Democratic primary voters' eyes. Bernie has a lot of the supposed solutions for a lot of the country's problems. And that resonated a ton with Democrats in 2016. You can even argue in 2020, Bernie had a lot of momentum, and then the DNC shut him down for a second time. But we'll get to that in 2020. But Hillary Clinton wins Iowa in 2016 by two-tenths of a point, which is ridiculous. Sorry, the dog's home. Apologies.
All good.
But then Bernie comes back and wins New Hampshire, 60% dominant. And then Hillary Clinton comes and wins Nevada. She wins huge in South Carolina. Clinton, they kind of split Super Tuesday. Bernie wins in Indiana. It was just a crazy time. The DNC is making a huge deal about, having the first female nominee. And that's still an issue now, obviously, with Harris being the nominee. But it was really close. But I think in another life, Bernie is the nominee. In another universe.
I mean, we can talk about that real quick. Because like the primary was mainly just Bernie and Hillary Clinton. Martin O'Malley was in there, governor of Maryland.
Yep.
Shout out to my boy O'Malley, who has disappeared since then. I think he was in the DNC, but in July, I think it was before the DNC, maybe, I don't know. WikiLeaks, big company, free Julian Assange. I think he's free now. They published like the leaks, the email leaks, where basically, I mean, it came out that the DNC was trying to promote Hillary Clinton throughout the campaign. This led to the resignation of the chair, who is now a congresswoman, Debbie Wasserman Schultz of Florida. She's now a congresswoman from Florida. And the best part about this, and this is coming from like me, who not a fan of President Trump really overall, this is the seeds of the whole President Trump is a Russian asset. The Russians are interfering with the 2016 election. It's something that was found out to be fully false. Well, mostly, I'm sure there's a little bit of attempts, at least in the scale that they're accusing them of, fully false, and basically a whole misinformation campaign to frankly smear President Trump, which I think is also a little unfair for him because he really had 2 years of his presidency, half of his presidency just taken over by the Russiagate stuff. So a lot of people call Russiagate, they don't know what it is, but basically it started with this email thing. Basically the idea that Russia was trying to promote Hillary Clinton by leaking, or trying to undermine Hillary Clinton by leaking the emails. Obviously, if you didn't want this to happen, supposedly, you wouldn't write these emails in the first place, and you wouldn't be undermining the democratic process overall. So I do have a lot of sympathy for Bernie Sanders just for the fact that, like, I mean, it was so clear. And I mean, it makes sense. Hillary Clinton would not have been any different from Obama or Clinton or her husband, Bill Clinton, or even Bush, at least where they matter, which is like, you know, the profit centers, the military, the foreign interference abroad. So it makes sense that they did that. It's a very off-color, we can say, thing to do. And yeah, eventually they ended up endorsing, or they nominated Clinton. And then Tim Kaine, what is the Tim Kaine pick? I mean, like, are you trying to lose Tim Kaine? What is that? Like, what are we doing? Senator from Virginia. Have not heard him ever make any waves in the Senate for legislation or anything he says or anything. I really forget that he was a vice presidential pick. I just don't understand what the logic was there. But Tim Kaine, vice president. And, yeah, probably one of the...
Well,
yeah.
Hear me out, actually. I have an interesting theory on this.
Okay, let's hear it.
That we can tie into our current election, actually.
Okay.
So Trump picks J.D. Vance as Biden is falling, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that Tim Kaine is 2016 J.D. Vance.
What do you mean?
Hillary Clinton wanted somebody that fit her agenda and her view. And I think Tim Kaine is a lot of that, like, genuinely.
Absolutely.
I think Tim Kaine.
Yeah, definitely.
So, and they viewed Trump as, this guy's a joke. Like, we can put, like, a glass of milk as vice president, and is it really going to matter? Because we're going to win anyway, and we don't need someone that actually helps the map, because the map doesn't matter. The blue wall exists.
That's a good point. That's actually a good point. That's
blue wall
interesting.
did not exist very shortly after, and it's still a blue hurdle.
Yeah,
I'll call it a blue hurdle.
We'll call it a
At
purple
least
wall.
Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania are blue hurdles.
A violet wall.
Because I think Republicans have to overperform to win them.
A violet wall. We'll say that. A little bit more.
Yeah,
blue.
You have to perform really well as a Republican to win there, and you have to campaign in a certain way there. But I guess getting into the Republican primary now is there were 17 major candidates, which was the largest presidential primary field in history before 2020 primary for the
2020 Democrats was absolutely crazy. There's names in there that I just, like, randomly remember, and I'm like, oh my god, they ran for president.
Yeah, I mean, so Trump came in second in Iowa to Ted Cruz, then Mike Huckabee.
Former governor of Arkansas, I think, right?
Yeah. Was it Ron Paul? I think it's Ron Paul, right?
I think it wasn't Rand. I think Ron Paul, libertarian icon.
He withdraws. Rick Santorum withdraws. Santorum, I remember, I thought he had pretty good momentum. Maybe
He
it was
won.
2012 with Santorum.
He won a primary. No, it must have been 2012. You might be right, yeah.
And then Trump wins heavily in New Hampshire. Chris Christie, Carly Fiorina.
Oh, it was Rand Paul. It was Rand Paul.
There was Rand?
It was Rand Paul. Gosh. Not only Rand
you're
Paul.
Right.
It was Lindsey Graham, current senator of South Carolina. It was Bobby Jindal, the former governor of Louisiana. Scott Walker, the former governor of Wisconsin. Rick Perry, the longtime former governor of Texas. Yeah, there's a crazy list of people in this. That George Pataki, former Republican governor of New York. There's a lot. Chris Christie. Did you mention Christie? That's probably where he made his name the most. Christie could have been president in 2012. Honestly, Carly Fiorina, big one. Fiorina was a big one. She was like Trump if Trump wasn't gonna, like, say a lot of random things, and also was a neocon. Then that was Carly Fiorina. This is a crazy field, honestly. Just looking back at this.
And then Cruz wins Alaska, Oklahoma, and Texas. Trump wins the other 7 states. Ben Carson suspends his campaign after a few days after that. Then Super Tuesday Part 2 happens. Kasich wins Ohio, and Trump wins everything else. Rubio suspends his campaign after losing Florida. And
big time, too. Embarrassed in Florida.
Trump keeps rolling. He scores all these landslide victories after this. Then Cruz and Kasich suspend their campaign after there's no chance of a contested convention where they could deny Trump the votes. But it's cool.
And
let's talk about the media real quick.
Let me say one thing. Let me say one thing that's really interesting about the way Trump won this primary. At no time in 2016 was until maybe the end were people really on board with Trump. Trump really won because there was a split field and he had like 30% support. It was actually it's actually fascinating because that's like he basically won with a consistent plurality, which is like really impressive across the board. Like I think polling kind of shows that. Like I mean, if you look at the early primary stats, 35% New Hampshire, 32% in South Carolina, 45 in Nevada.
Yeah.
And then Alabama, which is probably his best state in the union right now, 43% that early on. And we can give a shout out to our congressman back home, Dale Strong, for really kickstarting his candidacy in Madison County. That's really where the candidacy started for Donald Trump. He really started, one of the first events he ever did was in Alabama and in Madison, Alabama. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, you look at the board.
It wasn't the same event where he called the NFL players the not nice thing, right?
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
I think it was it may have been another event where he came back to Huntsville, but that made the news. Remember? I remember that was during the kneeling scandal.
Yeah, I remember.
Sons of not nice things.
Yeah, I remember Trump coming in the first time, and it was like a huge deal. And this was like early on, like it was like a big thing, and I remember some people going just to like see Trump in person. Like, are you serious? This guy's running for president? And like, yeah, it was crazy. But yeah, I mean, I'll finish up quickly. But like, down the list, Alaska 33%, Arkansas 33%, Georgia 39%, Massachusetts 49%, Oklahoma 28%, Tennessee 39%. It's just like he won with a pretty consistent plurality, and it's really impressive because like that's just something that doesn't happen a lot. Like normally it drops off, but then everybody finally, it took really everything, but then he finally got to coalesce, and he made a new coalition. Yeah. And then get into the media, because the media was.
So I think your point is actually really smart too, because I think it's true now. I think if you did polling now for Republicans, and that's why there was a primary this year, even though Trump won, I think Trump has a plurality, but I don't know if he necessarily has a full, huge majority of Republican support. Like, I really do think he sits anywhere between 45 and 55 on a good day among Republicans. It's just that everyone else doesn't have the same idea. And that's a good thing. I mean, but I think 2024 went the same way that 2016 did, in the same way that, well, at the end of the day, he's won. He's our guy. We have to support him because we don't want to support the other person.
Yeah.
And obviously there were still, like, the Lincoln Project and other, Bush Republican, the more academia Republicans that came out against Trump. But most Republicans coalesced around him, and, you kind of had to support him. You didn't want Hillary Clinton to be president. And the thing I was going to talk about with the media is the media kind of created this problem themselves, because I think there was a 2018 study found that Trump received nearly $2 billion in free media.
Yeah, the free media he got is crazy.
Yeah, when it turns out when you put somebody on TV all day talking, it kind of helps their movement gain air and gain traction.
Yeah, the free media, obviously, just to break it down, if no one knows, which I mean, we kind of did, just talking about just putting him as the face of the news, and he doesn't have to spend any money on it. No advertisements needed. Just a quick breakdown. They Streisand affected him, which is, like, just crazy. Like, they talked about him so much in, like, negative. Trump benefited from and he's a TV guy. No press is bad press or whatever, or what is it? All press is good press. He basically got that in 2016, because he literally just got that. Like, he just got so much press from just being the fact that Donald Trump was running for president, that he just kept like gaining and gaining good press, even though it wasn't necessarily always good. It was press, right? Like it's very fascinating. He can't do that now. Now it's oversaturated. It took 8 years, but yeah, the media was absolutely ridiculous. I think a lot of it comes from just the shock that someone like President Trump, who is very inflammatory, but also, I mean, he I think more of it, he knows what people want to hear. he knows what people want to hear at their worst. Like people don't want to admit they want to hear something. But he has a good job. He did a good job of bringing out like the most, I guess, visceral talking points and just amplifying them and making them the center. And the media clearly didn't like that because it took the attention off them. They wanted to be the trendsetter. They wanted to be the culture setter, right? If you're the media, you want to set the tone of the conversation. He kind of broke through that, but also he was saying some crazy things. But I don't think that, and I'm actually like generally a little upset about the way he was treated. And I'm not a fan of Trump again, but just like the fact that he was treated like that is just setting such a bad tone. And it's because media couldn't adapt. Is what I think that's all it is. In the end, they just couldn't accept the fact that someone had figured their scheme out. And I mean, Trump is one of the best television performers ever, maybe too. Honestly, like not actors, but like television personalities. So he knows how to handle the media and how to beat the media, and he did it.
And they run stuff on him because it gets clicks. People click on Trump stuff, especially now because he's even more divisive now. Any Trump article that anyone ever is going to post is going to get clicks. It just is because people are so passionate about it. He is the Voldemort of American politics. I mean, like it's kind of crazy, but like 2016, Trump's brand is completely different than the post 9/11 consensus. Now, Hillary Clinton, a lot of the stuff she's running on is Barack Obama's third term. She was in the administration.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's, she calls it inclusive capitalism. And that's very on brand, I think, for a third Obama term. Now, Trump is isolationist. It's protectionist, opposing NAFTA and, wanting to redo these bad trade deals. That was a huge deal with middle-class workers throughout middle America. Talking about people, without a college degree, that these elitists on the coast hate you. They think you're stupid. And that resonated with a lot of middle America that felt that the coastal elites actually thought they were that way. And it took their votes for granted. So, as much as Trump is sometimes crazy, he hits a lot of ideas that people genuinely resonate with. And sometimes he's not the best messenger for it. But sometimes the people like it. They like that he's like, no, like, I hate you guys too. Like, because they kind of feel that way.
I mean, like, if you look at Trump's 2016 candidacy and you read through the policy and then you look at J.D. Vance past the memes and everything and what he actually, like, talks about and campaigned on and has done in the Senate, that's why Trump picked J.D. Vance, I think. I mean, like, that's the 2016 Trump is those policies are still problems. It's not like Trump solved really any of them while in office. Those are real problems that affect a lot of people in this country, and it's super popular to talk about them. And I mean, again, like, yeah, the messaging is bad. It's obviously, like, it's much worse to say that, say there's a Muslim ban, like he called it, but then actually it'd be a ban on, like, immigration from, like, countries that the United States regards as, like, terrorist-led or whatever, or has a history of terrorism, which in itself has a lot of problems, but, like, the messaging is bad. A lot of the policies were very popular. I mean, getting rid of people that have worked in government their whole life and trying to change it up because it clearly doesn't work for people, that resonates. Tax cuts resonates. A border wall, I mean, it's popular. It's both candidates in this current election are supportive of a border wall. Trade agreement opposition is huge. I think it's a very protectionist argument to make, especially in the Rust Belt, which he swept, because those are the jobs that were decimated by trade agreements. And I think it's smart. It's a smart policy. It's a smart thing to hit. Things like that just absolutely just popular. And then, like, I mean, his branding was amazing. Make America Great Again is a really cool, like, slogan. I think Reagan used it. Resurrecting something like that is very smart stuff. The logo portrayed confidence, the iconic red hat. He was able to market amazingly. And the crazy thing is, like, it was it's famously a very, very chaotic operation, the 2016 Trump campaign. I think they were like 3-1 down on. So the enthusiasm gap was absolutely insane. I think they had like 3 times less campaign offices, all of that stuff. It was literally just like vibes, and then also like an actual message that punctured through, and then also just Clinton being just the worst candidate ever. And we can get into the general after this, but I mean, he definitely hit something. Like, and the media did not pick it up, and I still don't think they've given him the credit for what he did in 2016. They haven't really reckoned with the problems. Like, they haven't understood that like there was a real reason people support Trump. I think they kind of get it for Bernie, but it's funny because it's the same people. Like, the crossover Bernie Trump voter absolutely exists. Like, it's a pretty big chunk. It's actually like a pretty like popular sentiment. Because they both addressed problems. They weren't the same way they addressed them, but they were actually talking about the problems that people had. And it's still just so fascinating to me, like that Trump was able to like just masterfully tap into it. I don't know how he did it, honestly, because it's not like he's like a common dude. He's like a billionaire. He's like just a billionaire guy. Like, I don't know. It's fascinating that he was able to do it. Now, his presidency, he didn't really do a lot of the stuff that he wanted to talk about. He can blame that on the swamp. He can blame that on a lot of things. A lot of it was himself not really doing it. A lot of things he actually was unable just to do just because of the way the system's set up. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It was crazy. He said a lot of crazy things. What's your favorite Trumpism before we talk about the general election of the 2016 campaign?
My favorite one was "You'd be in jail."
That one's the best.
I think that is
one.
Now, obviously, it looks worse now because of Trump's own history. Obviously, it looks worse now. But I still think it is the single most iconic line in a presidential debate ever, because the classified emails thing was a huge deal. Like, anyone that knows anyone that works in government fields knows that you can't have classified information on private servers. That's like rule number 1. And then the volume that she had it. And the nonchalance, I think, and pettiness that she viewed it with, that was like, oh, like, it's not a big deal. And like everyone else is like, that's kind of a big deal. And, them talking about it and Trump kind of bringing it up without bringing it up at the debate, because I don't remember off the top of my head what they were talking about. I don't remember, but the "you be in jail" is.
Yeah, that's
good. How I felt about it.
That's good. It was good. I think so I have 2. I'm looking at like a list right now. Mine are either, I guess there's 3. The first one is Jeb Bush has to like the Mexican illegals because of his wife. There's a tweet that I retweeted and then deleted. That's good. I think he also doxed Lindsey Graham once, which is pretty funny. Not that one, though. I think it's just funny. Like, so Heidi Klum, sadly, she's no longer a 10. That's just funny. I'm not going to comment on that either way. I don't even know. She's like a model, right? I don't really know who Heidi Klum is. And then I think this one's just good, but I can't. It's not going to sound good if I say it, just because it's like Trump saying it. I remember him saying this in the debate. I have a great temperament. My temperament is very good, very calm. I think that's just I don't know. It's just funny, man. I don't know.
That is Trump. That's
Trump. Like, Trump. It's very good stuff. And he's been saying, and he has so many crazy ones. This is the political list. I just looked at some that I remember. I was like, these are pretty good. There's a lot of them. There's 155 on this list. But yeah, he was a machine. He still is. He still says some crazy stuff. And it's pretty funny still. He's lost it because he's older now. He's definitely lost some of it, but he's very funny still. It's very interesting. Yeah.
Getting closer to the election too, Trump trailed consistently by, I'm not going to say many points, but by almost likely margin nationwide, like between 5 and 8 points nationwide for months and months before the election. And then it tightens up, and then some more Trump comments, Trumpisms come out. I think it was about the Muslim ban. And he had a couple of zingers, like two weeks in a row, that kind of tanked him back down to 4 or 5 points under. And people, there was a movement in the Republican Party to replace Trump and have Pence and Condoleezza Rice run the ticket. which I think Condoleezza Rice, I'd love to see her in another administration. I think Condoleezza Rice is pretty universally liked.
Birmingham native Condoleezza Rice. Shout out to her.
Alabama native Condoleezza Rice. But then the Hillary Clinton, the Comey invested all of that. The Comey letter comes out like right before the election. And Hillary Clinton drops like 3 points just instantly. And I don't know if she ever came out and said it, but I know that people attached to her came out and said that they thought that cost her the election. Now, I think you and I can probably, do a little quick PB poll if we think it did or not.
There's 3 things that they say cost Hillary Clinton the election. That, Jill Stein, and this is mine. This is not what they say, but this is the truth. Not going to Wisconsin, not campaigning correctly. But yeah, no, I don't think that cost her. She was just a whole awful. She won 20 states. For context, Joe Biden won 25 states and D.C. and Nebraska's second. Barack Obama won 26 states and D.C. She won 20 states. She lost 25%, 20% of the vote share that they had. The Democrats have had before and after.
3,000 votes away from winning in the teens.
It was not like I said, Hillary. I don't know if I doubt we have any Hillary Clinton fans listening because that's kind of a weird thing to be, especially if you're like a younger adult like our audience is. But she was not a good candidate, awful candidate. Like genuinely, like how do you lose to President? How do you lose to Donald Trump? How do you lose to Donald Trump? How do you lose to Donald Trump? With 20 states, Joe Biden didn't. Joe Biden beat him. And you lose literally every swing state. She didn't win a swing state. She lost every single swing state. It's crazy.
Gotta get better at the game.
She gotta get good. And I mean, I feel like she's like, if you guys have watched Veep, she's like if Selena Meyer never became president, but just kept running. That's her, because like she came out at the DNC and she spoke. Like you just tell how much she hated doing that. Coming out there and being like, oh, Kamala Harris is really going to be the first woman president. It's just...
She's like gritting her teeth like that shouldn't be.
Yeah, like she's so bitter. And like if you see any interviews with her, she's always talking about it. She's always talking about Trump. It's like rent-free in her head. I guess it's rent-free in a lot of politicians' head, like President Trump. But like, it's crazy. Like it's absolutely... It's really... I mean, she deserves what she got. Because she was just an absolutely awful candidate. And I don't know how you go from... I mean, honestly, Bernie Sanders could have had a bit... Bernie Sanders probably would have actually done better. He probably would have been a closer election. He definitely could have won if it was... I think he definitely could have won the election.
You also have to remember that Bernie would have had a Republican Senate and House. Bernie would have gotten nothing done.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't know if he'd be an effective president, but I think he absolutely could have been president. I think if he wins the nomination, he 50-50 toss up Trump and Bernie. I don't think it's that hard to... I think it's pretty plausible to believe that's the case, if that's the election.
Well, it's probably true to say that Trump got more done after losing his majorities than he did while he had them. So you can...
Yeah, that's probably true.
I guess we should get into... So, we talked about the results. We're already running pretty long for this podcast, so maybe we can talk Trump's presidency when we do 2020, just Trump's presidency and then lead into 2020. But I was thinking we could do something about what our one big legacy of Trump is that will carry on with him after this. And I think I have my answer.
I think I have mine as well.
Go ahead.
It has to be January 6th. Like I don't know if he wanted a policy, but like it has to be January 6th. I think Trump was done absolutely wrong with the whole special, like the Russiagate stuff. He was absolutely railroaded. He should not have been done that way, and I think he was unfairly covered like by every single media outlet, even Fox early on, his favorite now. They all basically couldn't accept the changing tides, really, of American electoral politics. But I mean, he did some stuff during his presidency. He was a fine president when nothing was going on. COVID came. Not a fan of how he handled COVID personally. And then January 6th, whether he thinks he did it or not, whether he thinks he incited the riots or not, he definitely didn't help. He did not help. He did not help whatsoever. And I think that's crazy. I mean, I always forget that he was impeached twice. I don't think that matters because I think the first impeachment was absolutely BS anyways. That's actually crazy because it's funny because the first time he was impeached, it was because he wanted them to investigate Joe Biden. And it's actually coming out that, like, the Ukrainian government actually has paid the Biden family a lot of money for, like, different energy deals and stuff, which is actually kind of funny. They would never impeach Joe Biden because he's too old to stand trial. Like special counsel Robert Hur said, yeah, he can be president. It makes no sense to me. I just don't understand how that works. But it's funny because it's like a full circle moment. And, I mean, maybe it'll come out that Trump was right to do that. And I don't think that he should have been impeached twice, but I don't think you can remember him for anything. At least, hey, who knows? If he wins a second term and he does something else, who knows? But I don't think you can remember him for anything else but January 6th, as of now.
I think, at least in our time, I'm going to give him a ton of credit for increasing political participation and voter participation.
That's true.
We went from 2016 being kind of a not really that energetic of an election, at least in terms of voter turnout, to 2020 being electric in terms of voter turnout. And now we're kind of seeing a little bit of a dip. I don't really know how many people are genuinely going to turn out. But I think Trump, for all of his goods and his bads, I think that he has encouraged a lot of people who were previously really not disenfranchised, but really disengaged with the political process to kind of get fired up. I mean, he got a lot of people in a lot of, rural areas that just, who cares, to go out and vote. I think that that's really promising. And on the flip side, people in cities that absolutely despise him, he got a ton of those people to go out and vote too. So I think that for all of his goods and bads, he got a ton of people, a record number of people to vote for him and also vote for his opponent who beat him. But that being said, he has such a complicated legacy. I mean, we will be arguing Trump's legacy in history books for decades, as long as we're alive, because, I'm sure that, textbook writers are probably going to share more of a mainstream media approach to Trump's presidency. So I'm sure that, maybe you and I will take issue with it. And I'm sure that it's going to be debated. It's going to be the same way that I think Obama's presidency will be debated. But any modern, or even Reagan's starting to kind of get that now, where it's been long enough since his presidency that we're all just kind of like debating it now. You have the Reagan defenders and the Reagan attackers. Nixon's kind of had the same thing recently because of social media. I get Richard Nixon clips.
Yeah, you were talking about that last week. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I'm still getting them, and it's like,
hey, Nixon, for what it's worth,
Nixon's kind of cool.
He might have been the smartest president, but yeah, I mean, shady guy. But
conflicted. So Trump, I will give him a ton of credit for political participation. I think it's a great thing. Maybe not for all the right reasons.
Yeah,
but
I agree. It's a fair positive. But you know what?
Next week we can do the
ranking
presidency, because that'll be that shouldn't be too bad.
And let me actually take issue with the APSA presidential poll. They always rank the presidents. President Trump got last, which is absolutely insane because James Buchanan started the Civil War. And then Andrew Johnson is in front of James Buchanan, who basically wanted to continue the Civil War. So
riddle me this: how many people can name the 5 presidents before Lincoln? How many people can name them?
What's actually funny is that the list. I'm looking at the list right now. Buchanan, Johnson, and Pierce are all in the bottom 4, and they were all 14, 15, 17. So they're all the pre-Nixon or they're the Lincoln era presidents. And Fillmore's down there too, and so is Taylor actually. But Trump being last is crazy to me, just because it's very unfair. Last is unfair. He could have been a bottom tier president, but the dude started the Civil War. Buchanan started the actual Civil War. He's the reason that started. And Johnson did not want to keep the Union. Johnson did very begrudgingly kept the Union together.
He tried not to reinforce Reconstruction.
And they got rid of
really worse than what we had.
I think Trump got very done wrong in this one. Biden did get 14th in the same poll, which I think is very interesting. We can talk about that later. I think that's a little a bit of a recency bias. But at the same time, Trump also has recency bias with a negative connotation. So it's very interesting. Interesting data. Let me just look. The top 5 in the list is pretty standard normally, I think. Top 5 for the APSA was Lincoln, FDR, Washington, Roosevelt, Jefferson. I don't take too much issue with that. Maybe different orders. Obama is 7th, which is very fascinating, but ahead of Eisenhower and JFK and LBJ. I don't know, but that's all I'm going to say.
I think we'll do an episode of that too.
Yeah,
so we'll probably do 2 more election recaps, and then I think we'll do our tier list. And I think that'll get us pretty close to November.
We're almost there. We are at the next election. So we are at 2016 is over. Craziest election, left a lot out, but there's way too much to talk about. Last thing, I want to bash Hillary Clinton one more time for thinking that she's too above going to the Rust Belt. Absolutely the dumbest political move in modern history. Go campaign in Wisconsin. Jill Stein did not lose the election. Just because those voters would have likely voted for you if she wasn't on the ballot does not mean you deserve those voters. Madam President, or not Madam President. You never will be Madam President. Secretary Clinton. So that's my last little heated moment to Hillary Clinton, who is just really a sore loser and will never be president. So the call just dropped off for some reason, but I did that in Stride. But if you guys heard that, the call just dropped off with Bodeker. I'm not sure what the case was there. I'm going to start it again as we're talking here. But basically, that's the episode. Thank y'all for listening. Big episode today. A lot to talk about, but I appreciate y'all listening. Bodeker looks like he's not going to rejoin. So thank y'all for listening. I'm Eshan Pokhrel. He's Michael Bodeker, and we'll see y'all next week.